John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics with prophetic precision. And now J. Fred's picking sports. Are y'all ready for this? All across the airwaves and streams of the John Fredericks Media Network, John, Jack, and Nate, three guys that are pretty wise when it comes to picking winners. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, golf, UFC battles, you name it. When the game is on your mind and money's on the line, Godzilla Wins is your guide to picking winners. Before you make that play, hear what J. Fred has to say. Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
Oh yeah, for entertainment purposes only.
Good morning and welcome to another Saturday edition of the Godzilla Wins Saturday Sports Show. I'm here with Nate Perry, senior editor for GodzillaWins.com, as well as Dan Angel, senior editor for GodzillaWins.com. I'm sure my father, John Fredericks, the Godzilla of Truth, the Oracle of Deplorables, will be on shortly, although I don't know because I just don't really ever get the chance to talk to him too much during the week. He's a pretty busy guy, so sometimes I never know if he's just going to pop up here at 8:05 Eastern time, or if we're not going to see him till 10, who knows? You just never know with John. You just have to kind of roll with it. That's what he does, so that's what we do here on the Godzilla Wins Saturday Sports Show. But hey, listen, we got a huge show for you. Super excited for today. This is one of the best shows I think I've ever seen Godzilla Wins put together right here. You're not going to want to change the dial on this one. First hour, we're going to do a little NBA. Got to do some NBA. I mean, we don't do it often, but the J.J. Redick Lakers job thing, I think, is probably worth a discussion. Then we're going to do some college baseball World Series. Vince Mayoko is going to join us for that. Then the top of the hour, that's going to be 9 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to do some NHL. I mean, what a game last night, 5-1. The Oilers looking for the reverse sweep. First time since a reverse sweep has happened in the NHL, I think, since something like 1942.
In the finals, yeah.
In the finals, yeah. First time that the Edmonton is looking at a championship since 1990. We got the Canadian angle. So much to talk about. What a series. Super pumped for that. And then if we have time, which I think we will actually, we'll talk a little bit about Brent Venables, Oklahoma coach, inks a big deal for the Oklahoma Sooners there. And then we'll close out with this weird story about how the Kansas legislature is trying to entice both the Royals and the Chiefs, whose stadiums are in Kansas City, Missouri, to come across the border into Kansas. Pretty interesting story there. I know Dan's got a lot to say about that. I do too. It's and I know John will. I don't know if he's even heard about it, but give him 2 seconds to process that information, and he'll be screaming into the microphone. So should be an exciting show. Got a lot to cover here, but hey, before we get to do that, we got to do the disclaimer here, because Godzilla Wins and all of its subsidiaries are for entertainment purposes only. That means if you got a gambling problem, got to call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537 in Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Call 800-327-5050. Visit gamblinghelpline-ma.org. In Massachusetts, call 877-G-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In New York, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In Arizona, 1-800-522-4700. In Kansas and New Hampshire, 888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org. In Connecticut, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, or visit opgr.org in Oregon. I'm almost done talking, but I cannot start the show without talking about a little Healthy Cell. I mean, God, what a product! What a product Healthy Cell is. You got the joint health and mobility. You got the REM sleep, which Dad likes. You also got the one about the I can't even remember the name. I probably need to start taking it. It has to do with your mind. Sharpens up the mind there. I'll have to come back to that one. But I'm talking a little bit about REM sleep, because the thing with sleep is it can be hard to achieve a good night's sleep, especially if you only have 5 or 6 hours. A lot of us work a lot. We get 6, maybe 7 hours of sleep if we're lucky. And you got to be able to get in that third, REM sleep, the deep sleep where you dream, where you wake up refreshed, if you can get there. And one of the best ways to do that, if you're having trouble doing that, is to use Healthy Cell's REM sleep. It's just an incredible product. One of my favorite things on the show to talk about, because it works. I mean, that's the bottom line. It just works. So If you're having trouble sleeping, if you just want to wake up a little bit more refreshed, like you feel like you got a little bit more sleep than usual, you go to healthycell.com. That's healthycell.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla. You're going to get 20% off your order. 20% off is a big deal here at GodzillaWins.com. We love the 20% off. 10% is great, and we got a lot of products out there for 10% off. But I mean, when you can get 20% off, that's basically free. Can't afford not to at that price. So go ahead and look up healthycell.com, go to the website, find the REM sleep, and grab some REM sleep there. Get yourself a good night's sleep, courtesy of GodzillaWins.com. Okay, happy to bring in Dan and Nate here. Guys, we're going to start, as always, at least lately, with our weekly obsession. So I want to start, I think, with Nate here. Nate, what have you been obsessed with this week?
I think I've been obsessed with Bryson DeChambeau's total 180 in public perception. Like, for a guy that was more or less universally reviled probably 2 years ago, kind of just leading up to joining Live Tour, and then after he joined Live Tour, and everyone kind of, the general sort of opinion of him was that he was arrogant, that he was sort of out of touch, a guy that didn't like fun. And his response was basically to, beef up his social media and be like, people just need to see like a lot more of me to understand me. And I can think of almost nobody that would be a successful strategy for. Like, if you're unlikable before, I think the worst thing most people could do is like quadruple the exposure to that person to make them more likable. But for Bryson, it worked. I think that, he seems like he's in a much happier place. And now he's just like one of the really good guys on tour. After winning the US Open, it was, we've been talking about it all week. Like, he was so locked in, not just on the golf course, but just in terms of like handling the media responsibilities, handling, fans wanting autographs, people coming and talking to him. All of that, he just nailed so well. And, people are so happy for him. I'm really happy for him. So just, I've just been obsessing about how he's been able to just sort of like change his image so dramatically. And I'm sort of proud of him.
Bryson DeChambeau, live golfer, just won the U.S. Open on Sunday, second or third major. I think his second U.S. Open, maybe his
second U.S. Open.
Second major there. Incredible golfer, hits the ball about 1,000 feet every time he drives it. And Nate, I mean, what you're referencing is that kind of rough patch before the live stuff where he just seemed so unlikable for so many reasons. But a lot of that had to do with, some of it had to do with this rivalry that I think him and Brooks Koepka manufactured in order to boost engagement on Twitter. People like Brooks, and I think just Bryson was okay kind of playing the heel in that way. I don't think it mattered to him too much that fans didn't like him because the PGA Tour at that time, before Live was a thing, used to reward golfers for increasing their engagement in social media. And he's done a really fantastic job of that now. But before, 2 years ago, it was a little bit different for him in that regard, probably 3 years ago now. So I think you're right about that. Also, the thing with Bryson is he's not throwing temper tantrums out there on the course anymore. That was a big reason people didn't like him, was it was just hard to root for somebody who was like throwing his clubs and yelling at the rules official and trying to move his ball around
fans, for like saying anything. Yeah.
And he seems a lot looser on tour right now, which is good for the fans. It's good for golf. It's good for Bryson. He's great on social media. You're right. If I were to increase my exposure on social media, I'm not exactly sure that it would turn out as well as it has for Bryson. Peeling back the curtain even more can be a bit difficult at times for certain people. But Bryson really is genuinely, it seems like, at least I don't know him, but genuinely a good guy who is playing golf the way fans like to see it played, where you're engaging with the fans, but you're also gracious on the golf course. And he's really good. And I think that's the other thing. I think this year, like, Bryson rides the waves of his emotions pretty heavy. And I'm not sure we'd be loving him so much if he wasn't playing as well as he is right now. I think that there are times when Bryson when he's struggling, where all of that comes out. But we see that when all golfers, like one of my favorite golfers is Victor Hovland. He's been having a lot of trouble this year. And because of that trouble, he's not as likable as he was last year. Last year, he's smiling, sinking putts, doing all this stuff. And this year, it's a little bit different for Victor. It's not like he's throwing temper tantrums or something, but he's definitely a little bit tenser. And Bryson's super loose on the courts right now.
Yeah, and we've seen, like Rory McIlroy was the face of the PGA Tour for the last couple of years while they're going through all this sort of splintering of the golf system, and now he's sort of become the bad guy because his failures have been amplified so much that he's just unhappy.
His reaction yesterday Sunday was I think it was unacceptable. I mean, I understand him getting frustrated and leaving because he doesn't want to talk to the media. Obviously, he's frustrated with himself, but he's a professional. He's lost majors before. He's missed putts before. He needs to be able to compartmentalize those emotions at least for an hour and talk to the media. The guy finished second. He's the biggest, most popular golfer in the world. Everybody knows him. Everybody likes him. Everybody feels bad for him. Everybody wanted a playoff on Sunday. We're sad we didn't get it, whatever. But Bryson made that incredible shot on, I believe it was 18 in the bunker, which maybe Rory's putt allowed him to be a little bit more aggressive. I think it probably did. But even so, I think that reaction from Rory was unacceptable, and it's just not becoming of the face of golf. But I definitely understand it from a human perspective. But these guys are supposed to be superhuman sometimes, and I think we expect that of them. And while they can't always do it, there are moments like that have to be amplified when they fail. So a lot of golf stuff going on in the Twitter world and the social media. The U.S. Open's always important. But Dan, I know you've always got something interesting to talk about for your weekly obsession. Let's get to you.
Euro 2024. Been watching each match. I am befuddled by Slovakia's complete lack of consistency. If you had told me going into the group stage that we would have 3 points after 2 matches, I would have happily taken that. If you had told me we would beat Belgium and then turn around and blow a 1-0 lead to Ukraine, that is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, Belgium ranked 3rd in the world. We should have had no business winning that match. We did, and then all we needed is a point, and we couldn't get it against Ukraine. So we still have a decent shot to make it out of the group stage. Now we just have to get a result against Romania, which shouldn't be that hard to do, but still, it's just no consistency whatsoever.
Dan, I admit I have to keep a spreadsheet, I think,
Yes,
to
I know.
keep track of
I
all
know.
of your soccer allegiances. So
Yes.
explain to me. So there's Copa America that's going on. That's
Yes.
the tournament going on the stateside. And then
Yes.
there's the Euro tournament. That's all the European teams. Why Slovakia? That feels a little because of Finland. I know you have
That's
affinity for Finnish soccer.
That's easily the least random of my teams. Slovak heritage in my family.
Oh, beautiful. See, there we go.
Yeah.
That
Easy enough.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was kind of Dan. I was kind of expecting when I was 6 years old, I was changing the channel and Slovakia hit a goal.
No.
And yeah, so just
Jack, when I was 6 years old, Slovakia was still part of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, well,
I figured Dan used to do some reporting for the Slovak Times or something like that.
No, this
Yeah,
is actually the one team I follow that actually makes sense to people.
yeah. Okay, so look, little Euro soccer. We're gonna do a little. If we have time, I'd like to do a little bit of the Copa America stuff. I mean,
Sure.
I don't follow soccer that closely, but I know that it's going on and that a lot of people are talking about it. So we may be able to glean some interesting points from it. I'm going to talk about my weekly obsession. Then we'll bring Dad in. We want to do a little NBA as well. Dad, I did the Healthy Cell read, so we're good with that. So this is my weekly obsession, and I don't know how to feel about it. So this Bill Belichick thing, Bill Belichick's 72 years old, and all of a sudden he's kind of a little bit more public with his 24-year-old ex-cheerleader girlfriend. Now, listen, I pride myself, like people who know me, they can, there's a lot of things you could characterize about me that aren't exactly flattering. That's definitely true, as it is with everybody. But I do try to stay out of the judgment realm. Like people, they have their lived experience. They want to make their lived experience more livable. Good for them. As long as it's legal, whatever you want to do, fine. But I don't love the Belichick thing. I don't love it. I just don't love it. He is so old, and like I know, right? Like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, like all these guys have it, but for some reason in Hollywood, I feel more like, well, yeah, of course, like these guys are like Hollywood actors, like they're just born dirtbags. Like of course they're dating like someone who's 25 or 40 when they're 150 years old. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I felt like I needed Belichick to be a little bit better than this, because it's not like he's shown that his moral compass is exactly pointing north all the time. But I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, what do you talk about at 72 years old? Like with a 24-year-old cheerleader. And then I saw a story that the way that they hit it off, which angered me even more, was when she was in college. She was in college and they were on a plane together and she was doing a philosophy project for a philosophy class. And they like bonded over that. Like he was like sitting next to her being like, "Oh, is that Kierkegaard? Oh, well, I've read a little Kierkegaard in my day." Like I can't handle any of this news. I don't like going on social media and watching Bill Belichick waddle around with his girlfriend. But look, at the same time, like I try not to judge people. I mean, if you're happy, you're happy. If she's happy, she's happy. Like whatever, fine, they can go. I also hate that his boat is called 8 Rings, I think, or something, which really infuriated. I had no idea. So he bought a boat and then he named it after the amount of Super Bowl rings he has. So that also upset me. So I'm just me and Bill Belichick's relationship is awful right now. And I suppose if he comes on the show, I'd love for him to come on the show. He should come on the show. We can rehabilitate his. That we could rehabilitate his image right here on the show. But otherwise, I don't know. The boat thing really upset me. I understand we have to name boats, but like we're not pirates, so I don't really get why we're naming boats. Like these are just they're just
pirates.
Yeah, like I mean, they're just they're docked like in Nantucket. Like we don't actually.
He's so philosophically deep, he could have named it after suffering unto death or something after a Kierkegaard book.
Yeah, right. He could have named it the phenomenology of spirit. Right. Yeah. He could have named it the phenomenology of spirit or the second sex, something like that. But no, he goes with 8 Rings. Yeah. Well, hey, Second Sex is a great book. Shout out to Simone de Beauvoir. I think retired. I mean, she's long dead now, but I would put her in the existentialist. I think school. Maybe Nate. Absolutely. Maybe not. Yeah, definitely. Right. She's an existentialist from that time period. But nope. He went with 8 Rings for his 24-year-old girlfriend. And then there's pictures of him in there with like the dad, and the dad's like way younger than Belichick, which is also weird. The whole thing is just freaking me out.
What do you call? Yeah. And sorry, you're 50. I'm 72.
Right. And I guess if I'm the dad, if I'm the dad, maybe I'm like, oh, this is fine, I guess. What are
you gonna do? Yeah.
Yeah. So that look, hey, that's Belichick. I mean, we'll give him that. It's not like old men are always doing this. But we'll see. Now, Dad, I check the chat, Dad, real quick. I think you're having some audio and video issues that we want to get figured out. So Nate and I are gonna.
Story. Janet says, video audio isn't up. You might need to get source. Okay, I will do that. Can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you, but you're glitching a lot. And I will say this, having listened to the show last week, on the road, it is tough on the radio when you're, glitching in and out as far as the audio goes. So, the video's the video.
I might switch.
Sometimes
I might try
good.
I think last time I switched to my phone. I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll switch over to the phone.
Okay.
But
we'll figure it out.
I just gotta make. I'm gonna do that and go up. I just gotta make one comment on your boat. The last boat I remember. I can't think of the name of it. You guys will remember it. But here's why it's a bad idea to name boats. Gary Hart. Like, don't name a boat. Remember Gary Hart got caught with that chick in the middle of his presidential campaign, John? And it had the boat had some kind of a name, and that's all you heard about was the boat name. So yeah, bad idea naming a boat 8 Rings. It's like a pirate. All right, I'm going to switch out on get to another feed. I'll be right back.
All right, let's do a little NBA then. We got, Dan and Nate here, talk a little NBA. Nate, we're going to start with you. I guess the first thing, well, what I really want to talk about, I think, is just JJ Redick, and we can do a little bit of the Celtics, win the title. I mean, a lot of people are questioning the Celtics if this was really an impressive run because they ran into all these teams that were hurt, but they looked great in the finals. I'm not sure I love that narrative, but I am interested in this JJ Redick stuff. So Lakers have had a long journey toward JJ Redick, I think. They seem like they wanted Dan Hurley. I read an interview a while ago that Dan Hurley was interested in the job. I don't know how true that is, but he certainly said it, I think, on Ryan Russillo's show. I think he was on Russillo's show, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I was interested. There were times, but I just didn't take it. JJ Redick, Nate, is this a good hire for the Lakers? Like, JJ Redick has never coached an NBA game, and the Lakers aren't exactly at the top of their form right now. So why Redick? Why now?
I mean, so I guess it's not. The Lakers have such a bad track record of hiring lately. Basically, like, nobody can really get any traction in the job. I mean, they haven't had anyone stay for more than 3 seasons since Phil Jackson was there, what feels like 100 years ago now. So, I mean, it's not like the worst time. I mean, at least they're being aggressive and taking a shot. I mean, they've been kind of hiring people that are sort of up and coming, or sort of stabilizing, sort of modestly successful veteran coaches. I mean, so credit to them for taking kind of a bold swing at JJ Redick, I guess, first of all. You got to shake things up. What you've been doing hasn't been working. At least you're trying something different. And you're not just saying well, we'll just find another guy that can maybe get along with LeBron, because that's sort of been their strategy, and that hasn't been a terribly successful one. That being said, I don't think a lot of the Lakers' issues are coaching. I think that it's a lot of just lack of talent to support LeBron and AD. LeBron's not the same player he was 5-10 years ago, even 5 years ago. AD's had his sort of injuries. And there's really just not enough of a supporting cast for them for you to look at the Western Conference and be like, okay, this team is a lock to make the playoffs. Even with the greatest, if they just had the greatest coach in the world, I don't think it changes much that their roster's just sort of lacking talent. So maybe, JJ Redick gives them a little energy. He obviously gets along with LeBron well. They have a podcast together. So, and that's huge. Just in that it allows the Lakers probably to breathe a little bit easier, thinking well, at least LeBron's not just going to skip out on us because we at least sort of did our due diligence trying to hire his guy. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it. I mean, I didn't really see it with Dan Hurley either. JJ Redick makes more sense to me than Hurley does. But I mean, this is a big gamble. It's a high risk, high reward type of thing. I mean, they could either just totally fall on their face and JJ Redick makes it through a few months, or maybe it surprises all of us,
Yeah, Dan, I do agree with Nate. I think that JJ Redick makes more sense than Dan Hurley. Look, I love Dan Hurley. I mean, he's great for the game of college basketball. UConn is an absolute dynasty, but that style of coaching doesn't work in the NBA. And nobody is discounting JJ Redick's ability to draw up, plays or find lineups and rotations that work. I mean, he's very smart. He's very knowledgeable about the game played in the NBA. I do think, Dan, that this is a better hire than Dan Hurley, and it's definitely a risk. But then again, how much of a risk is it? Because LeBron will just, ask for the coach to be canned whenever he feels like the team's going in a different direction.
Yeah. I mean, the Lakers will do whatever LeBron wants them to do at this point. That's what they decided that their future is going to be as long as he's there. I mean, that's just the nature of the NBA. And it's one reason why I see little point from my standpoint to betting on NBA games, because there's just so much about the league that's superfluous. It's just so predicated on one or two guys, and it's easily the league where the coach is the most superfluous of any of them. Like every other sport, who you get as a coach really matters. And the NBA, it's a player-driven league. And there's a couple exceptions where a guy is clearly a good pro coach when he's not a college coach. Quinn Snyder comes to mind, total washout in college, but he's done very well with the Jazz and the Hawks. But for the most part, there's just so much dependent on who you can get in the lottery, what your cap situation looks like, and what players you already have in the fold. And the Lakers, for better or for worse, and as Nate said, it's mostly been for worse, have decided to just hitch their wagon to LeBron. So whoever he wants as coach, that's the direction they're going. And it might work out for JJ Redick. I mean, he certainly does know what he's talking about when it comes to basketball. But this is really a tough situation for him to throw himself in, because once you get fired, it's tough to get that second job. And there's a high chance that this could go wrong and he might get fired and have to hope that some other team doesn't hold it against him down the line.
Yeah. If he has like real coaching aspirations, which I suppose he does now. I mean, was always going to be good on the media. Like he's good in front of a microphone. He's great on TV. He's handsome, whatever.
And if he gets a number one coach, like a number one assistant, like if he can find somebody that's experienced, like I've seen Stan Van Gundy thrown around a lot as someone with connections to Redick who might be looking to get back into coaching. Like if he can go in as the assistant, like for Redick to kind of handle just some of like the day-to-day head coaching responsibilities as an experienced head coach, like as an assistant like that, then JJ Redick really just has to be the front-facing guy and the guy that keeps players happy. And that seems like a dream scenario,
Yeah, there are reports that the Lakers would like to surround JJ Redick with a bunch of former head coaches. And I think that probably is going to happen. I do think, like, the funny thing about coaching in the NBA is that, like, so I understand basketball pretty well. It's about the only sport that I could tell you a little bit more technically like what's going on. I can't do that with the NFL. I read those articles where people draw up plays in the NFL, like in screenshot everything and draw arrows, and I'm like, what is going on? I mean, like, seriously, I am a pretty smart guy. Like I can really get into some material, and I don't like care enough about the NFL, like the way that the plays are drawn up to do this, but I don't really even understand it. I'm like, okay, so the wide receivers are going where? Like, what is this? And so basketball is the only sport where this is even remotely true. And in college, when coaches talk about rotations, when they install an offense, I can kind of see what they're doing and anticipate where the ball's going. When you get to the NBA, like I have read breakdowns of how the NBA like approaches a game plan. It makes no sense. It is so complicated. It's like every play, it has 50 different possibilities. And I know for real, like Dan's saying, it's player driven. Like the plays don't really matter to the point where you're drawing up these incredible plays, and that's what's creating separation in space. A lot of times the play is give it to Jokic, right? Like that doesn't seem that difficult, but at the same time, I do think that it's a whole different ball game as far as the complicated nature of the plays being drawn up, the types of rotations, and then having to adjust to the personalities. I mean, the NBA is not college. You cannot just shout, block out at like grown men and have them respond the way you do when you're playing for the UConn Huskies and they can buy into the whole idea. A lot of these guys are just professional athletes, and you have to know how to sort of massage their personality and their ego and make the locker room supportive enough to where you can continue to win games. And I do think that Redick will be really good at that. That's kind of where I think he probably thrives. But again, it all depends on what LeBron wants to do. And, the Lakers are funny because they suck, and we took 10 minutes to talk about the coach they hired. So always interesting to talk about these teams that just dominate the media narrative. And then we'll see if they draft LeBron's son, which I think they might.
I mean, it's like how we in football season we spend so much time talking about Colorado, and the Buffaloes were terrible.
Yeah. But one of the reasons we talk so much about Colorado is because John kept telling us
that's true. That's
the
true.
Receipts
too.
are in or whatever.
But to reverse a line from Oregon coach Dan Lanning, I mean, the Lakers are rooted in flash, not substance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so we're gonna bring in Vince Maiko. who has been with us for a couple shows now, talking College World Series. We got some real College World Series aficionados. We got Vince, we got Dan, we got Dad up here. So I'm going to have them lead the discussion. I've been a little, well, Dad just left, but he'll be back. I've been traveling a little bit, so I missed a lot of the Omaha, like what got us to the point where now we have Texas A&M and Tennessee. I just didn't have a way to watch those games, so I don't have as much of an analysis on that as I would have had 2 weeks ago on the Super Regionals. But we are pumped for the series here. I think we all thought Tennessee might be here. Dan, we'll start with you, then we'll bring Vince in. Texas A&M is a bit of a surprise. Like, they're a good team, they hit, but that was, of all those teams, that was not the team that I thought was going to come out of that bracket.
Well, I wouldn't characterize A&M as a surprise. I think the only thing surprising about A&M was how they overcame their injuries to get to this point. Because, I mean, losing Montgomery was a huge blow right before the College World Series, but A&M's pitching has been so strong these past few games, and they're the only team in the tournament that not only hasn't lost a game in this tournament, they've never trailed. So A&M has played outstanding. I mean, this was the number 3 overall seed. So them being here isn't a big surprise. It's just the way that they've played in Omaha has been fairly surprising. And Tennessee, as we all said, has just been dominant. They were a little bit lucky to win that first game against Florida State. That easily could have gone the other way. We talked about the check swing last week that could have easily gone the other direction and ended the game. But once that happened, Tennessee was pretty much just uncatchable. I mean, the Volunteers really have every piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. They're such a complete team. Vince, as a college coach, and I know you talked about this a little bit yesterday on Dad's show, but we can kind of recap some of your discussion today. As a college coach, you're Texas A&M. You're looking at a team with over 50 wins that doesn't seem like they have a weakness. How do you approach, just from a coaching standpoint, maybe philosophically, how do you approach game one? What do you tell the players? How aggressive are you? Is game one the most important game in a 3-game series like this when you're playing someone like Tennessee?
Yeah. You know what? I've been singing Tennessee's praise for the last month or so, but the more I've gotten to see Texas A&M play, I give them a great chance to win this series, and primarily because of their pitching. And there's this old saying, good pitching beats good hitting anytime. And I guess we'll see over the next 3 days. But one thing about Texas A&M, about their pitching, is they have 2 back of the end bullpen guys. Chris Cortez specifically, they bring in for multiple innings. And he's a legitimate mid to upper 90s guy with a 90-mile-an-hour slider. I mean, he's got big league stuff right now. And obviously, when you have a back end bullpen guys like Texas A&M has, it doesn't do you much good if you don't have a lead. But as Dan mentioned, they've had the lead in every single game in the postseason. So it should be a great series. I think Texas A&M comes in thinking, hey, we're the favorites to win this thing. I honestly believe that they truly believe they can win this. And why wouldn't you? Ironically, both these teams, even though they're in the SEC, never met in the regular season. The only time they played was in the SEC tournament. And I went back and looked at the box score, and it looked like both teams didn't really, and I might have overlooked it, but looking at their box score, they didn't throw any of their big arms in that game. Yeah. I think they were just setting everything up for the postseason. But Tennessee ended up winning that game 7-4 in Hoover, Alabama. And that's the only time they met all year. So it's kind of, even though they're from the same conference, they don't know a lot about each other from a standpoint that they've had a 3-game series. But I think it's not often you get into a championship game and, in all honesty, you have the 2 best teams playing legitimately. I truly believe it. Even though Texas A&M was a 3 national seed, after examining everything, they should have been a 2 seed. Yeah. Because these are clearly the 2 best teams in America.
And
You
to Vince's point, the reason that Texas A&M and Tennessee didn't throw their best arms, I think, is because they were coming off that weird first day at the SEC tournament where all the favorites lost, including both of them. So I think they probably threw their better arms that first day to try and stay out of that losers bracket. And then when that didn't happen, they just had to go to Plan B.
Cortez is a funny case study. Last year, in 19 appearances, so it's not like he only had 2, and I could have been hurt. I don't know enough about Cortez. He started 6 games, 19 appearances, 7.34 ERA in 2023, 41 innings pitched, batting average 274. This year, he's 10-3. He's started only 3 games, so like Vince says, he's coming out of the back of the bullpen most of the time. 24 appearances. Opponents are batting 192 against him. 192. Now he's hit 10 guys, which is way more than he has. And like, think about this. Okay, so even at 2022, he had 25 appearances, struck out 32 batters. 24 appearances, he struck out 95 batters in 24 appearances. So when you're talking about someone from the back of the bullpen who is this dominant, and as Dan has mentioned, Texas A&M doesn't trail a lot. I mean, you get to the 7th or 8th inning, you hand the ball over to Cortez, and the game's over at that point. And we see this in Major League Baseball all the time. And I talk a lot in college about, the more, like, it's you can't ever turn the game off in college, right? You can be down 10-1 in the 8th, and you can win the game 11-1. That's how college is. That's why it's fun. But with a guy like Chris Cortez at the back of the bullpen, just looking at these statistics, Dan, I mean, this is pretty incredible. This is pretty impressive for the Aggies.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned get to the 7th and the game's over. Well, the game against Kentucky, Prager threw 6 no-hit innings. So where were the Wildcats going to come up with anything there? I mean, and then they turn around and they shut out Florida, who had just been whacking everything. I mean, that's just been a really impressive performance top to bottom by Cortez and the entire Aggies pitching staff. I mean, it's just been incredible to see what they've done against some really good offenses.
Vince, how has this pitching staff been able to shut down these incredible offenses? I mean, outside of Cortez, what else about their pitching has made them so special?
Well, their starting pitching has been outstanding. You look in the College World Series, I believe they've only given up 3 runs in the College World Series, 3 runs in 3 games. And not that Tennessee's pitching hasn't been good. Obviously, they had the 12-11 game against Florida State, and since then they've only allowed 3 runs. But you look at what Texas A&M has done, and probably the biggest game other than the game to get to Omaha was when they won an extra inning game against their in-state rival, the Texas Longhorns, that went, I think, 10, 11 innings, went extra innings. And they were fortunate to get that win, but it was a 2-2 game going into extra innings. So they it's like the bigger the moment is, the better they pitch. And boy, you can't get any bigger than a best-of-3 series to determine the national championship.
So, Dan, let's turn our attention to Tennessee first. Then we'll talk about kind of game 1 and what that looks like. We talked a lot about Texas A&M. Vince thinks that they are severely undervalued, maybe underestimated in this series. But look, Tennessee's got over 50 wins. I mean, they are dominant. They look.
Texas A&M does too.
Do they have over 50 wins? Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was only Tennessee.
Texas A&M, I think, has 52. Tennessee has 57.
Oh, okay. Wow, 57 wins. Jeez, that's a lot. Okay, so 2 teams over 50 wins. I guess the thing about Tennessee, I mean, not like they can't pitch, but what I always come away with is that they hit the ball 1,000 miles. Like every time I watch Tennessee play, someone hits it to the ocean. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Is Texas A&M going to be able to shut down this potent offense for 9 innings in at least game 1, which I think probably for both teams is a must-win game because these teams are so dominant. Maybe more must-win game for Tennessee because the pitching staff at A&M is so deep and so difficult that you don't want to get behind, 1-0.
I mean, I think it's equally important for both of them because Tennessee also has a pretty solid pitching staff. mean, the Volunteers were able to set up their rotation the way that they wanted to after that first game, and they have a really good bullpen. This is not a team that can hit and nothing else. This is not Virginia. No disrespect to the Cavaliers, but Virginia only had one real good arm and then was mostly stacked with hitters. Tennessee is balanced up and down. But the biggest thing about the Volunteers is how many of their top guys are just whacking the ball. Like 3 of their top 4 hitters are hitting 500 or better in Omaha. Like that's just unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, that is unheard of. That's an incredible. Vince, I know you like A&M, you like the Aggies here, but what is it about Tennessee that makes they're hitting so, like, I guess what I'm asking from a coaching standpoint is it their approach at the plate? Are they patient? Is it just that they're so much more talented hitting the ball than everyone else that's why they got 3 guys hitting over 500? What makes them so effective at the plate?
Well, you obviously, we discussed this last week. Christian Moore, who had a coming out party in game 1 where he hit for the cycle by the 6th inning in game 1. But a guy, I don't know if he's flown under the radar, but their left-handed hitting first baseman, Blake Burke.
Yep.
It's like I'm going back in time. And I mean, John, you can help me out on this one. I think we're roughly the same age. But I see Will Clark when I see Blake Burke at the plate. He's got just a beautiful, fluid, left-handed hitting swing where he can hit to all fields. He's a little more physical at this point in his time than Will Clark was when he was at Mississippi State. But boy, when I see Blake Burke, the left-handed hitting first baseman for Tennessee, I see Will Clark, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good company right there.
Yeah, that is good company.
Vince,
Dad,
Well,
go ahead,
I mean,
Dan.
Will Clark. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
So, Vince, one thing I'm wondering, facing this Tennessee lineup, 1 through 9, no holes, how much does that weigh on a pitcher? And what would you tell a pitcher in that situation to try and handle that kind of matchup?
That's a tough one, and we're going to see how good Texas A&M's pitching staff is. I believe now Tennessee has hit 172 home runs on the season. Mm-hmm. They have actually hit 20 home runs in the NC2A tournament, starting off with the regionals, super regionals, and now the CWS. 20 home runs in the postseason. Yeah, they come to hit. They're the type of team, I think, where Texas A&M has to really look at it. They've got to avoid the crooked number inning. Mm-hmm. Let Tennessee have a run here, a run there, but don't let that inning get out of control. And I think that's pitching 101 at the college level. If you can minimize the damage, give yourself a chance where you have an opportunity late in the game to win one, I think that's what they got to do. I mean, just, Tennessee's going to score probably 4 or 5 runs, but you don't want 4 or 5 of those runs coming in one inning. You want to minimize the damage. And that's going to be tough because Tennessee, boy, they're like a shark. They can taste the blood in the water when they get runners on and they score a run. It's just like they come after you offensively.
Yeah, and that was what we saw that second Florida State game. Seemed like that first inning, Tennessee really won the game right there.
Right. And, they do that all the time. Vince talking about pitching 101. I'll talk a little bit about coffee 101. That's where you get your Beard Vet coffee. It's the best coffee to get in the country right now. I'm drinking it right now. I got to fill up. I already drank my first cup before 9 o'clock. So I got to get back on the Beard Vet train there. Some of the best coffee you can get at the most reasonable prices. If you like good coffee for a good price, you got to go to beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla, going to get you 10% off. Now, the reason I love this coffee is there's really a couple. I couldn't even quantify the amount of reasons that I love this coffee. It's unquantifiable. But if I had to put a number on it, I'd probably say it's 2. The number 1 reason is that you can get the K cups, a lot of variety. You get the K cups, get the fine ground, or you can get the whole bean, grind them up right there. So a lot of variety, good flavors. If you like coffee with a little bit extra flavor, some extra punch, Beard Vet's got you covered. The other reason I like Beard Vet coffee is logistically just an amazing company. I mean, rivaling Amazon. in the speed with which they deliver that coffee. And you got to love that, because when you're ordering coffee, you don't want that coffee to show up like, 6 weeks later. You'd like it to show up a little earlier than that. Couple days, boom, it's there. Put in that promo code Godzilla, 10% off. Beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. Promo code Godzilla, 10% off. Dad, I see you sneezing and coughing on camera, so your feed must be better now. Let's get you in here, talk a little college baseball. I know right now you're locked into two things. That's college baseball and the NHL. So what do you see in this A&M Tennessee matchup here?
I mean, I don't bet college baseball except for the final in the World Series for obvious reasons. I have a son that plays in. It's not a good look. But once you get to the World Series, it doesn't matter. I mean, I bet Texas A&M plus 180 to win the series. And then I went back today and it's still plus 180. And so I bet more. I just think that's a great value. I think either of these teams, when you get to this point, can win this thing. I just think Texas A&M has a shot. And as I said the other day, if you think they're going to get swept, then fine. But I think they're going to win a game. And then I'm getting plus 180 in game 3 and anything can happen. And if you look at the first game today, right now, Tennessee is is minus 180, but they're minus 220 to win the series. So if if you just do this logically, if they lose the first game, Texas A&M is in the driver's seat, right? So I think the 180 that on DraftKings right now, the 180 on DK for the series is just a value play. And therefore, you can bet $50 or something to watch it. You got some action. So that's my number one thing. Look, it's hard to evaluate this. I mean, Tennessee has looked absolutely unbeatable, and they hit all the things that you guys have said. But now we're just down to the final two teams. We got to, anything can happen. Tennessee can lose 2 games to Texas A&M. Nobody would be shocked off their cartwheel. So I just think that's a good play. But I'm really looking forward to it. I just think this is going to be a great matchup. I think we have the 2 best teams. It's not like somebody got knocked out and they were the best. We have in my mind the 2 best teams in college baseball. And this is what baseball is meant to be. The 2 best teams play each other for all the gold. So you couldn't get a better. And if you looked at all the regionals and the super regionals, and then the College World Series, this has got to be, Vince, one of the best seasons ever to get average baseball fans involved in really getting into college baseball. Because there were so many walk-offs. There were so many exciting games. There were so many teams that got in that were winning games at like Connecticut, for instance, taking their team down to the wire, right? And that super regional. So there's all kinds of great storylines, and it was just great for the kids, great for the sport, great for college baseball. And I think this is really, really going to be a fun championship 2 out of 3. And I love the format. Really, a lot of people have criticized it. I love the format. Get the final 2 teams after the double elim. You go 2 out of 3, and we'll see who wins. Should be a very, very fun 3 days, because I think it's going 3 games. Should be a fun 3 days.
So I have a question. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Go ahead, Nate. No, go ahead.
I have a question for the guys, just sort of like looking at these games, because I've been looking at the line and I've been reading about sort of, how Texas A&M would be priced if Prager was on the mound. And it's looking like, as far as I know, the starters haven't been released yet. Is that correct, Dan?
I don't think either team is named a starter.
And everything that I'd read had said that, if Prager was starting, they'd probably be a slight favorite. And right now they're a pretty huge underdog, plus 140. Tennessee's minus 180. So it looks like the sportsbooks aren't thinking that Prager will start. Is that kind of, and I guess, like, what's the wisdom in holding him back for game 2 or 3 if that's the case?
Well, what they might do is similar to what they've done already. Is I think they might throw a bullpen game for the first one to try and see how that goes, and if it goes fairly decent, bring their top bullpen arm back for game 3, because I think they're just trying to manage their pitching staff so that if they do need that third game, they have some rest for their top bullpen guys rather than having to throw them back-to-back days.
Can I jump in here, guys?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Here's what Tennessee has done in the game one of the regionals, game one of the super regionals, and game one of the College World Series, and it maps out that they would do it again. They treat game one kind of like the Tampa Bay Rays did a few years ago, using an opener. And the guy they bring in is a guy named Chris Stamos, who I think gets 1 or 2 outs, and they've got AJ Cossey who comes in. And Cossey has, I believe, of his 24 appearances, he's only started like maybe 5-6 games. So Tennessee has done this over the last month or two. And he comes in and he'll throw 4, 5, 6 games. And he's 13-3 on the year. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you can somehow push a run or two across before Cossey comes into the game, if you're Texas A&M, boom, you've got a couple run lead ready to go, and you got things set up. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting way that Tony Vitella is doing, where he's starting a guy, getting just an out or two in the first, and then brings his best bullpen arm at this point in time, AJ Cossey, to get him into the middle to the late part of the game.
Yeah, and Texas A&M's done something similar with Justin Lampkin. They threw him in that first game against Florida and then brought him back for the second meeting with Florida, whereas Prager threw the game against Kentucky. So, Vince, one thing I'd like to ask you, because these coaches know each other. I mean, Vitello used to be an assistant at TCU while A&M's coach was there. What kind of information do you glean from facing a coach that you have a past relationship with? Obviously both coaches are in the same situation, but what comes into play there?
Well, you know what? It's the one thing I have noticed with, especially when you've got the deeper we've gotten into the postseason, is there's not as much bunting as there used to be. You don't see, when's the last time you've seen a hit and run?
That's
so you
true.
don't see a lot of those tendencies where maybe if I coached under Jim Schlossnagel, I know that, hey, in this situation, he likes to hit and run, or they like to drag bunt in this situation. It's pretty much been big boy baseball. They just sit back and play for the 3-run homer. So I don't know if there's any tendencies that I can really pick up, because it's just like, okay, I make out my lineup, I throw them out there, go get them, boys. And sometimes the best coaching you can do is no coaching at all.
That's an interesting point. Like, Dan, the question, and then Vince's answer, the idea that, because both these coaches come from kind of the same tree, they've got similar philosophies. So you're not going to see
I'm sorry.
You're not going to see one coach do some sort of, small ball, another coach do something completely different. It's just mostly, like you say, big boy baseball here. Throw the ball hard and try to catch up to it, hit it out of the park. So should be a lot of fun to watch this series. Dad, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it's like we're all Earl Weaver now, right? I mean, this was Earl Weaver baseball back with the Orioles, back when he had like Boog Powell, Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, all those home run hitters, Paul Blair, he said, "Hey, I just sit around and wait for a 3-run homer." I mean, it's like we're all playing Earl Weaver baseball now. The guy was 50 years ahead of his time, or what was that? It was at 69 and 70. Now it's 24, 30, 54 years ahead of his time. And he kept, all he wanted his starters to do was throw gas. Palmer, Cuellar, Dave McNally, like he just wanted gas. And then he said, I sit around and wait for a 3-run homer. So it's like Earl Weaver is now like the king of baseball of all time, because he had it figured out 5 decades ago. But that's exactly it. I mean, you don't see any small ball. Now, we saw it at West Virginia with Coach Mazey, so that was fun, because they call it Mazey ball. You get a lot of bunts, get a lot of hit and runs, get a lot of stolen bases. But you just don't see that now when you get to this level. And part of it, they're telling me, is these aluminum bats. Now, in the Cape Cod League, where I am right now in Cape Cod, you're seeing 5x that what I saw in college baseball from other teams, not from Maisie because he did this now retired, but because they have wooden bats here, so balls don't like fly out off those metal bats, so it's a little bit different. But look, when you've got a metal bat and you've got hitters that are 230, 6'3", I mean, why are you going to bunt the baseball? Why are you going to do hit and run? You just hope that they power one out of there. So catch a fastball. So I get it. Baseball is different depending on where you're at. But let me just say one thing about the Cape Cod League. I've been here now a week or so, seeing like 5 or 6 games. I tell you, Vince, this is baseball what it was meant to be. I mean, the purity here, it's like you don't want to leave. I mean, you go to these games, only a couple that they're all in high school stadiums. Only a couple of them have lights outside. Ours do, Harwich does. But kids running around, hot dogs on the grill, people in beach chairs lined around the outfield. It's free to get in. People bring their families. It's a fun atmosphere. And it's the way baseball was meant to be. It's like kids are playing a kid's game, even though obviously there's a ton of scouts there and all that. But it really is, if you're a baseball fan, this really is the purity of the game. It kind of reminds me, when I played in a little league or when we got to high school, it was just different back then. I mean, it was all about the fun of the game. Now it's a business for many of these situations. But if you can ever get up to this Cape Cod League and you really love baseball, it's just the purity is almost, I don't know, it's almost like cleansing, Vince. It's like, this is what it was meant to be. Okay, now I understand why I've been following baseball since I'm 8 and I'm 66. Now I understand it again. Vince, go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, so let's do some picks here for the last game, or for the first game one. We won't do the whole series, just game one. A couple things I like on just to note on DraftKings here is so Texas A&M money line. Tennessee has 78% of the betting public for game one. They also have 77% of the spread. That's Tennessee minus 1.5 on the run line. The total, we got over 63% of the betting public is over 11.5 runs. Dan, we'll start with you. We'll go around the horn here if we have time. Dan, what do you like in this game one? Any props, or you want to play the run line? What do you like here?
I think, excuse me, I think that total might be a little bit too high. I mean, I know Tennessee can match the ball and has shown that, but the last couple games, the Vols pitching has really held up. I mean, as Vince said, they held North Carolina to 1 run. They held Florida State to 2 runs. And Texas A&M's offense is not as strong as it was before the injuries set in. So I think under might be the way to play this. I know everybody's going to fall in love with the over given the Vols' big bats, but the Aggies have shown they can pitch really well, and Tennessee's pitching isn't bad either. So I think the under is the play, and I'm going to lean toward the Vols taking this first game.
Interesting. So so only 37% of the betting public likes the under, but you're right, 11.5 is really high. Nate, in this game one, what do you like?
I mean, in game one, I think just from just a pure betting perspective, as sort of a college baseball neophyte, I think I just have to take plus 140 for A&M. I mean, I just don't see, Tennessee being that much better to where they're almost a 2-1 favorite. So I'd lean A&M here. If you think Tennessee's the better team, and they lose today, then maybe take Tennessee for the series tomorrow when they're maybe a little bit more reasonably priced.
Yeah, so I like Texas A&M plus 140. I mean, I hate Texas A&M. I don't like the brand. I don't like the school. I don't like the football team. I don't like anything about Texas A&M. They play in the SEC. I went to Ole Miss, whatever. But I don't like saying I like Texas A&M, but I do like plus 140. Let's say that. So I think these are two really good teams. And I think this is going to be a pretty close game. So I'm just going to go with the money line plus 140, see if I can get a little juice on that and win that. But I'll tell you what, everybody likes Tennessee. People like them for the series.
Why don't you take 180? Why don't you take 180 and bet the series? If you're going to take 140 tonight, why not take 180 and bet the series?
No, I don't, because I don't want to. We're about to be at the top of the hour, so I want to thank Vince for joining us as always. Vince, it's been great having you for the College World Series. Your insight as a coach has been terrific for us, and I know the audience has really loved it as well. So thank you so much. Coming up next, we're doing a little NHL, then maybe some sports topics around the world here. Don't turn the dial. We'll be right back. Thanks so much, Vince Mayoko, for joining us for the College World Series.
My pleasure.
Listening to Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network. For a deeper dive without the jive, visit the website of winners, GodzillaWins.com. Let's get back to the show with the guys in the know, John, Jack, and Nate. It's Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
And we are back talking college baseball. I'm sorry, we're talking NHL now, a little Stanley Cup. I still saw Vince on the screen, so I thought, we're still doing college baseball, but he just logged off there. We want to shout out Vince one more time. You're listening to Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show here with Nate Perry and Dan Angel, senior editors for GodzillaWins.com, as well as John Fredericks, my father, the Godzilla of Truth, publisher of GodzillaWins.com, and baseball and hockey. I guess not a neophyte anymore, as Nate said. Maybe he's definitely has a burgeoning interest in some of those sports. So we're gonna get him in on the phone. I think he's been having trouble all day with his audio. Cape Cod is not exactly Manhattan as far as that goes. Can be tough to get the internet working there, but we'll get it figured out. That's what we do here on Saturday. We problem solve on the fly. That's how we do the business here. So we'll get that going in a minute. We want to talk a little bit, I think, about MyPillow before we get straight into the Stanley Cup. And I'm pumped about the Stanley Cup, man. I'm so pumped the Oilers won. We get 30 minutes to talk about that, I think, or at least 20 talk about that. So we'll do a little bit of that. But before we do that, got to talk about MyPillow. What an incredible product, MyPillow. I just got a couple more pillows. MyPillows were looking a little ugly, a little yellow, I think. I don't know if that's supposed to happen, but they were. So I bought some new pillows, and you gotta use that promo code FUN, because you go to mypillow.com, use the promo code FUN, you get 80% off, at least up to 80% off on all products. Depending on the product, a lot of them qualify. They'll come quickly, and you won't be disappointed. I mean, they got the slippers, they got the towels, they got the dishcloths, they got of course, the MyPillow 2.0. They got all sorts of products for you. So you just go to mypillow.com. That's mypillow.com. Put in the promo code FUN. Hey, what an easy promo code, FUN, fun, promo code FUN, will get you up to 80% off on all of your MyPillow products. So go ahead and look for something you like, grab it for the summer, a couple beach towels, whatever. You won't be disappointed. MyPillow.com, promo code FUN. All right, we're going to do some Stanley Cup playoffs. Dan, going to have to start with you, then we'll go to Dad, as long as his technology is working and he's good to go. But we're going to start here with Dan. Listen, Dan, I mean, we talked about this earlier in the show. This is incredible, right? So we got Panthers jump out to a 3-0 lead. They look incredible. Commanding, great defense, stifling that Oiler offense. And then we got the Oilers, who just come roaring back in these 3 games and look incredible. They looked incredible last night. Jump out to a 2-0 lead, win the game 5-1. Panthers look lackadaisical. They look nonplussed. They don't look. They look maybe bewildered. I don't know what's going on with Florida. Now we got a game 7. We're looking for the first reverse sweep since like 1942. It's the first time that a team in hockey in the finals has come back from 3-0 since I think 1945. We got an Oiler championship on the line, first one since 1990. first Canadian championship, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, since like 96 or maybe 99?
1993.
1993. So there we go.
Montreal.
So we got a lot of history in this game 7, Dan. Just set us up for how, like, I guess let's talk first about your game 6 reaction, and then Dad, we'll get to you and we'll do some game 7 stuff as well.
I mean, are we sure that I'm the best person to do that? Like, Florida made me look really bad the last 3 games. John and I both said we thought the series was over last week, and wrong. So, yeah, I mean, at least I've called the totals correctly, but I just don't know what's going on with this Panther team. They've basically gotten away from everything that got them there, and Connor McDavid has been otherworldly. So it's just been almost like 2 different series what Edmonton has done these last 3 games. And I don't know. I mean, I thought Florida had the mentality to finish this off, but it's looking like the Oilers might be in their heads, and game 4 might have done a lot more damage. The end of game 3 really might have done a lot more damage to the Panthers' psyche than anyone thought. So I think the over is probably the way to go again, because both teams are going to be in desperation mode yet again. But oh boy, I don't know on this money line anymore.
Dad, I'm sure you watched game 6. What's your reaction? I mean, you had the Oilers, you've taken the last couple games, you thought the series was over, now they're back. What do you think?
Oh, Cape Cod technology.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll keep trying to figure out John's technology there. So, look, Nate, we'll go to you. Game 6 reaction.
I mean, game 6 reaction is we all thought last week when we were doing the show, we thought this is over. I mean, we were across the board. John was ready to give up on the Oilers. Dan was, me and Dan were sort of celebrating the Florida Panthers. I think on some level, this is all over. And then it's like there's no other way when it gets like this and you're up 3-0 in a series and now it's 3-3. There's no other way to look at it other than you're just watching a team just gasping for air and choking. I mean, there's optically no other way to look at it. I mean, for better or worse, it's like, they've had, 3 chances to do something and they've shown just no life at all. They've just not shown the killer instinct they have. They hadn't lost, I think, and I don't think this is wrong. They hadn't lost 3 games in a row the entire season. Or if they had, that it only happened once. And now it's happening to them here. I mean, it's just like their whole game abandoned them at the absolute worst time. And anyone that's played sports, knows what that feels like probably. And, anyone that's watched sports for long enough has seen this sort of thing before. And it doesn't make you feel hopeful for the Florida Panthers now that, suddenly in the biggest moment, now they're going to be able to close the deal when they've had sort of some softer chances the last 3 games and haven't been able to make it happen.
Yeah, I think they've lost 3 games twice in the regular season or something, 3 games in a row. So this is not something that they do really ever. Florida Panthers are such a good hockey team, and they've just sort of had a meltdown here. But this is the finals, and the pressure's on. We'll see about game 7. Dad, what is your reaction here for game 6? Because you had the Oilers.
Well, listen, I thought the Oilers were the better team going into this thing. I bet them in the first 3 games. I went 0-3. So, I mean, I took it into shorts on, my whole hockey thing just blew up in those 3 games. But the third game, Dan nailed it. The third game, the Oilers came back a little bit. But, the game was basically over. So, now they're down 3-0. No hockey team, I don't think, has ever come back. I think you got to go back to, 1918 when they were playing with whatever, basically a tire iron or something.
1942.
But no team has ever come back.
1942.
Yeah, 1942. That was during the war. So it's been so long. But now you look at these games. I mean, the Oilers are the better team, and I kept betting them because they in the first 3 games they had like 90 shots on goal and scored 2 goals. It's like, how does this guy keep stopping these goals? And they bring in their lines, and You know, Florida's got more depth, no question. Depth doesn't matter now. That depth in this seventh game, you could throw that out the window. I love the Oilers. You know, I had big last night. I knew they were going to win that game. I had the game before that, so I'm catching them back now. But they're a better team, 5-on-5. They got the two of the best players in the NHL. They're relentless on offense. Now the goals are getting through. And you look at these last three games; these have all been blowouts. You know, I was watching the game last night, and I got the feeling when the Panthers made it 2-1 on that goal right after the Oilers scored. Panthers come right down, bang, to get a goal. But then, you know, they were over the line. It was clear when they showed it on the replay. They were offsides. Puck was over the line. They took that away. They took that goal away, and you saw right there. You know, Florida was done after that. They let one play basically get in their heads, and the coach was going crazy. But on the video, I mean, that puck was over that line. It was clear. So as soon as you saw it, like, that goal's gone. But, you know, you keep the relentless offensive pressure of Edmonton, which has been their signature this season. They just shoot on goal, and they finally broke through. And, I mean, you're going to Florida now. I get how tough they are at home. They haven't lost 4 games in a row all season. Everything points, okay, they're going to straighten this out. I don't see it. I love Edmonton. What is it, Sunday night? I think they go in. I think that they're going to make history. And they have a better team. They get more shots on goal. Their defense has now come together. Here's what I give all the credit to Edmonton's coach. I mean, he has, after those first 2 games, you know, he figured it out. And they made all the adjustments they needed to make. The guy gets an A+ 5-star as far as a hockey coach here on the fly game time. But Oilers are going to win this thing. And if you look at Florida, just look at Florida in the third period last night. This team is done. I mean, they were done. And so I love Edmonton. I think they're going to win. And, you know, down 3-0. It's tough when you lose 3 bets on a team, 1, 2, 3. Like, oh my God! And they couldn't get a goal. I mean, I'm watching these games. They're controlling the tempo. They're controlling the ice. Florida gets 5 shots, gets a goal. We get 29 shots, get no goals. It's like, what the hell? This is unheard of. But now they're breaking through. I love Edmonton to win this thing tomorrow night.
Dan, one of the reasons that Edmonton, I think, has been able to capitalize is that Florida's special teams has just been abysmal. 0 for 11 on power plays. Why? Like, what is going wrong on special teams from someone who watches a lot of hockey, talking to me who doesn't watch a ton of hockey? Just explain to me why Florida's special teams has sort of fallen apart in this series.
They're not generating shots. I mean, their stars are not stepping up to the moment. They had one power play go by last night in the third period where, I mean, John nailed it. The emotions weren't there, and they didn't put a single shot on goal in those 2 minutes. They've had a couple power plays where it's gone the other way, and Edmonton has scored shorthanded. I mean, Florida has just been a mess on special teams, and they've gotten away from their system. Like, the biggest thing in this series was always going to be, can the Panthers stick to their system and force the Oilers to play on their terms? Like, there are some teams and some coaches that are system teams. Like a few years back when Ottawa made a miracle run to the Eastern Finals, we were a system team. And the way that it worked was if we stuck to the system and forced teams to play the way that we like to play, we were going to win that game. If we got out of what we were doing and tried to chase the puck and went all over the place, it could get embarrassing. And that's how Florida has been. I mean, when the Panthers stuck to their system, they forced the Oilers to come to them. They forced Edmonton into shots they didn't really want, and the Oilers couldn't handle it. Now, Florida seems to have let the pressure get to them. They just don't seem to have the mental strength to finish this off, and Edmonton has taken full advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the the game on Monday, this is amazing, right? Florida's only minus 115 at home.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just a numbers guy, you're like, okay, well, they're tough at home. They're minus 115. That's a great bet. To find a team that won 4 after down 3, you got to go all the way back to what do you say, 1942, in the beginning of the Second World War. In the war, I mean, that's like 40 plus 60 plus 40. It's 90 years ago before this has happened. I mean, it's just mind-boggling what Edmonton has done. But the bookmakers, lines don't lie, right? Vegas doesn't lie. There's a lot of money on this thing. That's why they try to make it right. Either way, you're gonna bet you're gonna have to lay. Oilers are minus 105, and Panthers minus 115. And the other thing about this is only a dime line. So if you're gonna do anything in this hockey playoff, this is the one to go for when you only got a dime line. So you bet the Panthers, you lay $1.15 to 100. You bet the Oilers, you lay 105 to 100. So this is a place to go. But obviously the bookmakers are respecting Edmonton now. Actually, it's a pick 'em game basically in Florida is the way this is basically set up.
I wouldn't touch this pregame. Like the way that I'm looking at this is watch the first 5 minutes of this game and see how Florida looks. If the Panthers are sticking to their system, playing smart hockey and generally look crisp, I take the bet on the Panthers. If they look like they're lethargic again and they come slow out of the gate, bet the Oilers, because before a goal is scored, the odds aren't going to move very much off that dime line, if at all. So I would watch the first couple minutes and then get your bet in, because the way that Florida looks is probably going to tell who's going to win this game 7.
Yeah, my favorite.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My favorite play here, if we're just talking game 7, picks and plays, is probably, and I think Dan mentioned this earlier, it's got to be the over 5.5 goals. I just think both teams have to be aggressive. Like you've got, so Edmonton wins last night. That the over would have hit because it's been at 5.5, I think, the whole series, and that was 6. But I don't think Florida scores 1 goal, and I think Edmonton's going to score. I think both these teams are going to score a lot of goals, and it's either like the way the series has been going this week. It's either that Florida lays down and Edmonton just waxes them, in which case you might get to the over just because of a blowout. Or what's more than likely, considering Florida is as good as they are, that they're going to have to play a different type of game than they're used to playing. Where those first 3 games, the first 2 specifically, man, their defense, tightened up. Like Dad said, Edmonton had like 29 shots on goal, couldn't get anything across the line into the net, and then all of a sudden they figured it out. And Florida's going to have to adjust. They can't just play defense and win this game 2-1. Edmonton's going to score, and their Connor McDavid and all their best players in hockey are really right now peaking at the right time. So that's the only thing I like, and it's plus 120, which I kind of think is an interesting line. I mean, I understand why, because it's hard to get to 6 goals in hockey, but I really like that, and I think the public likes it as well. So that's kind of my play if I'm looking at a play. Nate, we'll go to you here, then we'll kind of round out with the 2 hockey aficionados, Dan and Dad. Is there a play you like here, something that you've noticed that you'll be looking for in game 7?
I mean, the contrarian in me wants to bet the under here, under 5.5 goals. It's gone over in the last 4 games. It's not moved off 5.5. I just feel like if Florida wants to have a chance, sort of to continue what we've been talking about with Florida's style of play, they have to play better team defense and not just leave Bobrovsky there like on his own, which is kind of what's been happening the last few games. So I think that Florida, if there's one thing that I think you can reliably hope for in this spot, it's that they play a little bit better defensively. They haven't been generating a ton of shots, but that's not terribly normal for them to get outshot in games, or not terribly abnormal for them to get outshot in games. So I think that I would expect more from Florida's defense to turn around than Florida's offense to turn around. So I kind of just lean under, just because the books have been so stubborn. It just feels like they're baiting you into taking the over here because all of these games have just flown over the last week or so.
Yeah, and that's why we love Nate, because he's always going to, if the public is leaning one way, he's just going to zag the other way. And, sometimes he's right, but then sometimes he's wrong because he's not really that good at this. So that's why we have him on the show, because he's just mediocre.
A compliment ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the thing about Nate that I love when it comes to betting is he nails futures. Like, he's like the future king. Like, you need an NFL future in August, he could just hands out winners. But
June. Actually, June.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we could probably do some next week. He'd hand you some that'll cash like in January. He plays the long game. But when it comes to his searing hot hockey takes, I'm not exactly sure that I'm following him.
That's a fair perspective.
Like he's the Pied Piper of hockey over here.
I'd trust Nate at this point over myself, given the way these last couple games have gone. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's been hard to handicap. We know, Dad, that you are all over the Edmonton Oilers. I'm sure you like the money line. You don't want to touch the puck line because it's like minus 270 for that plus 1.5. If you think they're going to win, just take the money line. Dan, I know you like the over. Anything else you're looking for? Some props? Anything you might want to hand out before we get to soccer?
Yeah. Like I said last week, look down the line for somebody who might throw up a random goal for the winner, because that often happens in these game sevens where somebody you would not expect turns into the goal scorer. So if there's a player that you like on a prop for scoring a goal, take a flyer on it, because anything can happen in a game seven. It's really just a game of who's going to get the right bounce.
Tell me this is going to be a fun game. I mean, this is going to be I can't wait for Monday night. This is going to be so much fun. This game, it's just going to be a blast. I can't wait.
I really wish that the College World Series and Game 7 weren't on the same night.
You got to go back to the chat. You got to flip the channels. I mean, I think the hockey game. I think that the hockey game should be tonight. I don't know why they're waiting until Monday. Let's just go. Let's go.
John,
let's just go to Florida, get it over with.
John, the reason is because this is the longest distance in history between two cities.
9 million miles.
In the Stanley Cup Final.
It's like going to Moscow. I mean,
Alberta,
you get there Wednesday.
Alberta to Fort Lauderdale is a long, long journey.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
absolutely.
Fun. Oilers are
what the NHL really should have done here. What they should have done here is gone with a 2-3-2 format.
Yeah, for a series like this.
That's a good idea.
But they don't like to do that because they feel like if the series flips at all, then all of a sudden the quote unquote home team doesn't have the advantage. But I used to love they used to do 2-3-2 formats in a lot of different sports, and I always liked it because it was like, it was so simple.
You got to steal one in the first little set, and then you're right there.
Yeah.
And then like if you can't win those 3 at home and clean up the series, like then you have to go on the road for 2 games, and it's like the biggest home field advantage ever, because all of a sudden you got game 6 and 7 at your place. So I always like the 2-3-2, but I kind of understand why they do the 2-2-1-1-1, and a lot of miles in between Edmonton and Fort Lauderdale to make up. So should be a fun game 7. I'm pumped. I think any sports fan should be. I mean, this is history. If Edmonton were to do this, this is the Red Sox in 04.
Two best words in sports, game 7.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I doubt it's going to be a blow. But if it is, even that'll be fun. This series has just been a lot of fun, and we are excited to see Game 7 Monday night. And I'm sure Dan will have his pick up at GodzillaWins.com, so don't forget to check that out. Also, go to GodzillaWins.com for your daily picks. John's been dropping those hockey bombs, dropping some other stuff. If you've been following the daily picks, then you've been making money, because John is always making money on that thing. I don't know how, but he's got it figured out at this point. So go to GodzillaWins.com. You just look at the little daily picks toggle up there. You go over there, and you'll see all our writers' picks, especially John, who stays up to date on that more than anyone else. So we want to shout him out for keeping up to date on his
Thank you.
daily picks. We don't want to shout out Nate.
Daily
who's only
picks,
put in
baby.
9 daily picks.
Yeah, Nate
ever.
doesn't put any up.
So no shout out for Nate. Only shout out for John. And to be honest with you, I don't even do it that often because I'm busy. But Dad is not as busy as the rest of us as much as he claims to be. So
Get out of here.
he's got plenty of time.
Good morning.
Find times for
Well,
us important.
Yeah, anyone
I'm not
who gets to spend 3 weeks in Cape Cod and gets to spend the first 95 minutes of the show figuring out his audio and video for the Saturday show must have a ton of time on his hands. So, that's the way I'll leave that. Now, Dad, before we go to, I need your help with this live read. Before we go to soccer, which we'll talk about with Dan here in a minute, we got to talk a little bit about Rosie's. I was driving through Michigan, getting back to Mississippi this week, and I almost thought, let's take a left turn, maybe go a little east. We don't have to go back to Mississippi right now. We could hit Rosie's. You know what I mean? It's not that far away. Instead, I went home. But I thought about it. I thought about it for a minute. I was in Indiana. I thought this isn't that far. Get over to Rosie's in Virginia. Dad, how do people who are in the Virginia area or across the country get involved in Rosie's Gaming Emporium?
Well, first of all, if you wanted to go to Rosie's, all you had to do was let Langley drive, and you would have probably gotten there by mistake. That's the first thing you should have did. Secondly, is I got to give a shout out to your son on Beard Vet Coffee, because my Beard Vet was about when the cup gets a little empty, and you did your Beard Vet live read, and I had to I got such I gotta have my coffee. I got up and made another cup because it is so good. So when you can do a live read and make the person want to go have it, that is really good. I mean, you can't get better than that. I just had to go and get another cup when you were saying how fantastic it is. But look, I love Rosie's because I love going to Rosie's because you get the biggest payouts and the biggest jackpots. Why wouldn't you like to go somewhere where you get the biggest jackpots and the biggest payouts? Why do you get that? Because the legislature finally did something smart in Virginia, not with their scumbag skill games. They finally did something good in Virginia when they passed this legislation to get pari-mutuel gambling and to get the Rosie's gaming machines in there. They have the lowest government takeout, the lowest state take of any casino in the country. Therefore, you get more money out because you're getting less take. That's why they have the biggest payouts and the biggest jackpots. Plus, it's fun. The atmosphere, it's not like Vegas or you go to Reno or something. You know how the duty gets you have pump the oxygen in and there's no windows and there's no clocks. Rosie's is windows all over the place. Come in, have fun, win money, have fun. Food, great. Drinks, great. Service, great. Atmosphere, great. Everything gets a 10. You're gonna have so much fun. And they're all around Virginia. You can go to Collinswood by Danville. You go to Dumfries. They're putting up a new hotel right there in Nova. They got Hampton. They got Colonial Downs, which is in New Kent, Richmond, right by the office. They've got Vinton by Roanoke. It's just a great place. And Colonial Downs opening up. Now, I'm not going to be there first week. I'm in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. Bus will be there. That's where I'll be. But after that, we're going right to Rosie's, baby. We're shipping out. We can't wait. Got my suite there. Best horse racing in America. They have 4 major stake races. It's really going to be fun. So you want to check this out. Just go to rosiegaming.com, rosiegaming.com. And look, if you want to get tickets right now for Colonial Downs, you can just go to colonialdowns.com, get your box seats now, reserve them, especially for the big races. It's going to be sold out. Get them now. All 4, it's right on the schedule. Just go to colonialdowns.com. We love Rosie's. They've been a great partner of us, and their marketing VP, Nate Mize, is brilliant. He's created a culture there that is opposite of any other type of casino you've ever been in. The guy's a mastermind, and a lot of people question him, and now he's reaping the benefits of his vision. And so rosiegaming.com, you're going to love it. Have fun, and win money. Good combo.
Great combo. Have fun, win money. No, they got I don't know. I mean, I've been to a lot of casinos, and now I'm trying to think if they do have clocks somewhere. I mean, the Windows thing I get.
No,
I guess
no clocks.
There's got to be
There's
clocks
no
in some of
clocks.
these casinos.
There's
Yeah, I
no
mean,
clocks.
someone's got to I mean, they don't have like a grandfather clock in the middle of the thing, but I mean, they got to have a digital clock
That would
somewhere.
be interesting.
There's no clock.
No clocks.
Got to be a clock
There's no
somewhere
clock.
in these
Nate
casinos.
says no clock. No clocks, no windows. Pump.
Maybe in the
boxes.
corner of the
There's only
sports
two-
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There got to be one because Anyway, Dan,
Go to the
let's get a
sports
little
book, right?
soccer here.
Okay.
U.S. men's team Copa America tournament. Just tell us for our non-soccer listening sort of listeners, I guess, what is going on with Copa America, with the USA team, and your takeaways from some of this tournament, because this is a big tournament, I think,
Yeah,
for
this is
USA,
pretty
and
big.
just this is a big Copa America is a big tournament for everyone. So
Yeah.
what's going on here, and what are your kind of major takeaways?
All right, so Copa America is a big tournament on its own. It's the championship of South America, actually. But the reason that this is such a big tournament is, the U.S. got basically CONCACAF got invited to join in with South America. So this is a tournament featuring the 10 South American sides of CONMEBOL and the 6 best CONCACAF sides. So this is basically a full America's championship. And the other reason that this is so huge is this is really the last big test that the United States are going to get before the World Cup, because normally you play qualifiers to get to the World Cup, but because the US is hosting in 2 years, they qualify automatically. So there are no qualifiers. It's going to be all friendlies moving on, and friendlies are really not a great test. You really need to be playing top sides in matches that matter. So this is basically where the U.S. is going to work out the kinks, find out what it has before they start preparing for the World Cup in 2 years. And this group is really manageable. They managed to draw the weakest team in the field in Bolivia. Bolivia is absolutely abysmal when they have to play away from altitude. Their biggest advantage is they play their home matches at La Paz, which is like 10,000 feet above sea level. So opponents come in, they're gasping for air, and Bolivia is able to beat stronger sides when they play at home. When they come down from the elevation, Bolivia has just been awful. So there's no reason the U.S. should have any problems with Bolivia that first match. Panama, somebody the U.S. sees in qualification in CONCACAF regularly, that should be a fairly winnable match. And then comes the final group stage match with Uruguay, which is going to be the biggest test before the knockout stages. And the knockouts are probably where it ends for the U.S. because they're going to get a team out of Group C, which is almost certain to be either Brazil or Colombia, both of whom the U.S. just played and lost to in a friendly. Colombia absolutely waxed the U.S. Brazil was a little more respectable, but still, I don't believe the U.S. has ever beaten Brazil. So I don't expect the U.S. to make it past the quarterfinals. A not insignificant part of me is kind of hoping that the U.S. stubs its toe here and finds a way to botch getting out of this group, because I don't believe Greg Berhalter is the right man for the job. And if the U.S. screws this up and doesn't make the knockout stage, then he is probably gone.
Okay, so this is interesting because I was going to ask you, like, okay, we got the World Cup coming up a couple of years. What's the best alternative, best outcome in Copa America for the men's team? And I was expecting it, an answer that'd be, get to the knockout stage, lose to Brazil, look ready to compete on the world stage. But you're saying for you, the best alternative would actually be if they underperform and
Yes.
their coach gets canned.
Yes.
Why do you feel like the coaching is not right for the USA men's team?
I mean, it just didn't look great in the 2022 World Cup. I thought Berhalter got a lot of his tactics wrong. The U.S. did not look good in what was a fairly manageable group. They managed to get through it because of England just smashing Iran the first match and setting things up so that the U.S. had a fairly easy time to get through in second. But they were hopelessly outclassed by the Netherlands, who, while good, wasn't one of the best European sides at that World Cup. So I think that the United States has a real opportunity to give a great performance at home with this generation growing up, getting another 2 years under their belts, if they have the right coach in place. and I don't think Berhalter is that coach. I mean, I think he made a lot of decisions that were on a personal level rather than on a level of what's best for the team. His handling of Gio Reyna wasn't very good, and I just think that a new voice is probably needed.
I think that is, very sound analysis, and I mean, America did underperform again in the on the world stage in the World Cup. However, man, like you say, right, Panama, Uruguay, like some of these teams are just, and of course Bolivia. Like, I mean, if they lose and they don't get to the knockout stage, he probably should be fired. I mean, this is like not a strong group.
Losing to Uruguay, there's no shame in that. Uruguay punches above its weight as a soccer nation. They have a very strong culture. I mean, this is a side that has 4 stars above the crest for a reason. Granted, 2 of those are Olympic medals from before the World Cup was really a huge thing, but they've won the World Cup twice. They're usually a quarterfinalist or occasional semifinalist. So losing to Uruguay is not a big deal. Losing to Panama would be pretty bad. Losing to Bolivia would be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I've definitely seen, I've seen Panama put up a fight, before. They're always playing Panama and some of these types of things. So that could happen. I'm not so sure about Bolivia, but okay. Very interesting stuff. We're going to keep our eye here on Copa America, and the USA men's team had to get a little soccer in. That is, I think, Dan, I don't know, Dan, if that's your favorite sport, but it's definitely the one that you, hockey. I mean, yeah, other than hockey, I guess. Yeah, you follow soccer all the time. And listen, if you're a big soccer fan, Dan writes very well about soccer all the time on GodzillaWins.com. So go to GodzillaWins.com and you'll find some of Dan's soccer coverage there as well. He does a really nice job with those picks and is really locked in. Some of these sports like hockey and soccer, not everybody's betting them. And a lot of the picks are, if you go to some other websites, it's clear that maybe AI wrote a lot of them, especially the sports that are not like the big sports. And that's becoming more of a thing that I'm just noticing as I look at these picks. It's like, okay, well, this was AI. I mean, this is just listing the statistics of teams in paragraph form and then taking whatever the favorite is in the money line. It's like, that's not, we don't want to do that at Godzilla Wins. We'd rather pay our writers to give us awesome analysis, and Dan does that for soccer all the time. Also does it for hockey. So at least right now, he does it for everything, really. But for right now, soccer and hockey. So go to GodzillaWins.com and you can find that. We're going to move on to couple different topics. I really want to save at least 15 minutes for this Kansas thing because I know Dan's got some thoughts, and I think Nate and Dad also will have a lot of thoughts here. It's a really weird thing that it's not weird, but it's definitely merits our attention. And I think our show specifically, considering Dad does so much with politics, is really apt to talk about this in a way that maybe not every show does. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Venables signing this big deal with Oklahoma, 6-year deal, something, like 45 million, in total, or 56 million in total, something like that, 8 million a year. And Nate, we'll start with you because you're, big college football guy, big Oklahoma, not Oklahoma, the Sooners, but what's going on in the state. Venables has been successful up to a point at that school. I mean, he went 10-3 last year, but it's like he can't really get over the hump to where we kind of expect Oklahoma to be. And now he's only been there 2 years. Lincoln was there before that. I don't know. This 6-year deal felt weird because they signed a 6-year deal with him 2 years ago. So he still had 4 years on his contract. I'm just not sure why they felt the need to basically give him a raise and make him feel more comfortable at a school that he probably is not going to leave.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess to me, what it feels like is Oklahoma is really nervous about going to the SEC. And they feel like they need some stability with their coaching staff, to kind of just lock them in case this goes sideways for them. I mean, the track record for teams entering the SEC from other conferences, especially in those first couple of years, is not kind awesome. Venables is 16-10 as a coach at Oklahoma, playing in a fairly soft Big 12 schedule, kind of a top heavy Big 12. So I don't see it from just a on the field results standpoint. You're 16-10 playing in the Big 12 where you have a lot of just kind of walkover games as Oklahoma. last season they were great. They beat Texas, who was number 3 in the country at the time. But this feels more like trying to get ahead of them having sort of a slow start and them just trusting that he's the guy and being like, to their boosters being like, well, we can't get rid of him. We have so much invested now. More than it's like they're just trying to lock in their guy because they think he's the best coach. It just feels like a stability move and a little bit of worry for like what the SEC is going to hold. I mean, it's a big boy conference, and the Big 12 has not been a big boy conference in quite some time.
They should be worried. They travel to Auburn, Missouri, Ole Miss, and LSU. And I always think Missouri is a difficult team, so I throw them in there. Ole Miss is going to be difficult to beat this year. LSU is always tough. And then, of course, they play Texas on neutral ground in that rivalry game. They host Tennessee. They host South Carolina. Those are fairly winnable. I mean, Tennessee's tough, though. And they also have to play Tulane, which, you never know with Tulane. So, Dad, we'll go to Dad and then Nate. I mean, is this just them trying to project 6 years in the future and say, within this 6-year span, we need you to build a program that can compete in the SEC. We don't care what you've done in the Big 12. We need a 10-3 season in the SEC. We're going to give you 6 years and a bunch of money to do that. And if you can't do it, you're gone.
Well, 6 years is a long time. Obviously, Oklahoma has bet here on stability and getting money from their boosters. And that's what this now has all become. The money that's flowing around. I mean, to pay this guy, what did he get? $50 million or something? He's a college football guy. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is like joke money now. It's like funny money. It's like you're playing Monopoly. You get $50 million to coach football in a college because you're going to the SEC, and you're 16-10, as you guys pointed out, in the Big 12. And look, I'm not going to say Big 12 college football is not, but it's not the SEC. I mean, you're playing, Kansas State. You have some gimme games there, as Nate said, and you go 16-10. You do, right? But now it's all about the money, and it's all about the NIL money, and it's all about those former players or coaches or whatever it is that makes this up, the alumni, the boosters. They need to pour millions and millions of dollars into their NIL fund to get the players. And so all of that now is getting into the calculation. So they like Venable. They figured, okay, he's a good sales guy, because that's the other thing you got to look at. Now they're getting money, and it's not only based on winning. It's, can you go to the boosters? Can you go to the alumni? Can you go to major sponsors? And can you raise money? And can you sell? And if you can do that and fill up your foundation, your NIL foundation coffers, that the coaches can then, pay players to come or keep them, then that goes in part of the equation. So they've made the decision that this guy can sell, that this guy can get money in, and he can build up for the SEC their NIL. Ohio State did the same thing with their coach. Even though he can't beat Michigan, it doesn't matter, because he said, look, I need more NIL money. I got to get better players. And he said this right in the media. I got on the phone. I shut the windows. I closed it, kind of like what I do when we're not meeting our number. You shut the window. He said, I shut the blinds. I shut the door. I shut my computer off. I fired up my phone, and I made phone calls for 5 days, 15 hours a day. And I raised the money I need to now get players that can beat Michigan. I mean, this is what college football is now. This is what the coaching game is. You got to be able to raise money, and that's why a lot of these coaches, like Saban, they don't want any part of this. They're out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
a lot of money.
I mean,
but obviously they've made the decision he can get money in as well as win football, because you don't win football games at all. It all collapses. So you have to do both.
Right. Yeah.
I think the other thing that sort of is worth mentioning just briefly is like the bar's a little bit lower now for a lot of these coaches because of the 12-team expanded playoff that we're going to see for the first time. Like, it used to be like making the playoff was so like just pie in the sky, like almost unattainable as if you're playing in the Big 12. Like, unless you just run the table.
Wasn't.
But no, but now playing in the SEC, like playing like a really loaded schedule, they have a lot better chance at sort of making the playoff at least. And I think that's probably realistically for most coaches that are playing in major conferences, like making to the playoff is probably like good enough most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing, and Dan, I want to get your thoughts, and then we'll move on to this the stadium thing. But I mean, Nate, I think you're right about that, right? That you can get into the playoff and you can make some noise, and that's all about branding. I mean, you get into the playoff, you make some noise, you recruit. That's where these players want to go, where they're on TV in the biggest moments. Dan, I mean, okay, so Venables is 16-10, but he's 10-3 last year. In his first year, Lincoln Riley, bolted to UNC and took a bunch of players with them with the transfer portal, et cetera. I mean, he put together a pretty good team last year. He's coached in something like 8 national championships or something crazy like that. Longtime assistant for Clemson. I mean, to me, if I'm Oklahoma, I think I can do worse than Venables, and I don't think I mind spending a bunch of money to keep a guy who could possibly build, something really special in Oklahoma, and seems to want to stay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's more of a panic hire by Oklahoma. Like, I think it's a situation where
I agree with that.
Like,
I agree.
Like,
Panic hire.
you look at that 10-3 record, and who did Oklahoma beat last year? BYU, no bowl game. TCU, no bowl game. Iowa State, yeah, they had a nice run, but they finished 7-6. Cincinnati, no bowl game. UCF, 7-6. I mean, they had one good win over Texas. They lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State. They didn't play Kansas State last year. So it wasn't really that impressive of a record. And I mean, they ran into a legitimate 10-win team in Arizona. Obviously, the bowl games don't mean what they used to, but Arizona won that game pretty comfortably. And I honestly wonder, like, is Venables the right guy to lead them into the SEC? Because, as you mentioned, their schedule is a meat grinder. This is not like when Missouri went in and embarrassed the SEC by going from a nothing program in the Big 12 to immediately winning 2 SEC East titles in their first 3 years in the conference. Like, the SEC has beefed up on both sides of the conference, and divisions aren't a thing anymore. So even if Oklahoma was going to the quote unquote weaker division, getting to play the likes of Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and a lost Tennessee at the time, like Missouri did, that's not a thing now. So Oklahoma, like, Jack, you didn't even mention the fact that they end the year with, I believe, Alabama and LSU. So,
yeah,
I mean, this is
very tough.
Yeah,
Very
this
tough.
is not going to be easy at all. And it would not surprise me if this team looks more like the team that barely scraped into a bowl in Venables' first year, and Oklahoma's wondering, okay, did we make a mistake here?
Well,
Well,
I want to get. Well, hold on, Dad, because I want to get to the Kansas stuff. So I'm gonna put a bow on this. Then we're gonna move on because I really want to get to the stadium stuff. A couple things, just I guess observations. Number one, I think they'll be able to handle Maine on November 2nd. So there's a win for Venables. They should be able to handle Maine. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think I'm willing to take Venables and the 6-year deal and hope for the best. But you're right. I mean, the SEC is not what it was when Missouri shocked everyone and won 2 East. I mean, it's just not the same conference. And the divisions are definitely important in that regard. So, we'll see. I mean, this is big boy football. And a lot of people in Oklahoma don't like Venables. Like, they don't think he's any good. So it's interesting. But just like all this other stuff, these college teams, man, they're totally cool just firing coaches and then paying them whatever and then hiring another coach.
And
So,
Oklahoma has unlimited money.
Yeah, right. Like $50 million to Oklahoma is monopoly money in the world of the boosters. The same thing with Texas and USC and Michigan and some of these big schools like this, Alabama. So, whatever the buyout is, it doesn't really matter. I think they just want to try to stabilize the program as they usher the ship into the SEC. Nate, you're right about that. $50 million is like nothing to Oklahoma. This is like unlimited money for a football program that wants to be a proud winning program all the time and is oftentimes a proud winning program. So, and if they still had Lincoln, they probably would be singing a different tune. So, we'll see. Now, before we get to this stadium stuff, and we're going to get Dan and John to really give us some insight here on what's going on in Kansas. I want to talk a little bit about Healthy Cell. We talked early, Dad, about the Healthy Cells REM sleep. I'll talk about joint health and mobility. I always have issues with my joints. I got some hip issues, got some tendonitis issues. I like to work out. I like to run these days in the summer. You get outside, try to run a little bit, do a little less weightlifting. That's a winter thing. I'm not training for the Olympics here. So, it's not like I'm have to do weightlifting all year round. Just get outside, get a little exercise. But even when you're running in, the knees hurt, the back hurts, all this stuff. And what really helps me is Healthy Cells Joint Health and Mobility. I take it every day, and I love it. It really, it's better than Aleve. It's better on your liver than some of these, naproxen or some of these other stuff that is just anti-inflammatory. This stuff really helps regenerate some of the problems that you might have from your joints, and having good joint health is really so important. So we love healthycell.com. What we want you to do, we want you to go to healthycell.com. We want you to put in the promo code Godzilla, get 20% off all of your needs. You get that REM sleep, you get the brain power one. You can also get the joint health and mobility. So healthycell.com, joint health and mobility, 20% off there. I love it. My favorite product that I use for my health is joint health and mobility, because it just helps me with some of the aches and pains of getting older and still wanting to exercise. Joint health and mobility, healthycell.com, promo code Godzilla. You listen to the Godzilla Win Saturday Sports Show. Here we are. Got 10 minutes left. Love this topic, Dan. We're going to start with Dan. Then, Dad, we're going to go to you. This is incredible. So Kansas is has started a war with Missouri in the who's going to have the stadium on their side of the Kansas City line here. And they are attempting to entice both the Chiefs and the Royals to move their stadiums, rebuild. I think the Chiefs are looking at a renovation, and the Royals are looking to just rebuild a stadium here in the future. We're talking a couple years. And Kansas passed some laws that basically give the teams a really, really nice package for if they want to build these stadiums in Kansas. The money that they make, the taxpayer on the hook for a lot of this, and they have like 30 years to pay it back. I mean, it's a really nice deal for Kansas. Dan, then Dad, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, this is pretty interesting. This is an interesting move for Kansas, trying to get the Royals and the Chiefs on their side of the border, which also is crazy to think like Arrowhead they could just abandon like one of the most recognizable stadiums in all sports.
Yeah, it's like Kansas pulled out a gun with Missouri on the other side, pointed it at itself, and pulled the trigger. Like, I'm sorry, this makes no sense for Kansas. This is a terrible idea for the Sunflower State. And on top of that, they just passed a tax cut on top of it, which, where's the money going to come from for this? Like, you're throwing money you already don't have at two teams who don't need it. You're never going to make your money back from this. You cut taxes on top of it, so you're going to get even less money. So you're just counting on lottery money and sports betting to somehow save your bacon here. I mean, if I'm Missouri, I'm seeing this deal, and I'm calling up the Chiefs and the Royals. Like, here's a list of moving companies. So, do you guys need help packing? Go. Here's directions to get across State Line Road. See ya. Like, this is a great opportunity for Missouri to get out from under having to pay the extra tax that the Chiefs and the Royals get on their current stadiums, and watch Kansas deal with these problems instead.
Right. And I mean, okay, Dad, let's bring you in here. I mean, what's going on? Like, you're a politics guy. Like, this went through the state legislature. I mean, we know you're not a fan of taxpayer funded stadiums. We know that. So like, what is the thinking here? Dan seems to think the thinking is asinine. He could be right. What do you think?
Well, I'm not a fan of taxpayer funded stadiums, except they do it in Nashville for my Titans, because Amy Adams snookered the entire legislature there to give her millions of dollars. She's got billions. Now she has more billions. Most brilliant lady in professional sports is Amy Adams. But having said that, here's the deal. Money talks, nobody walks. It's like if you're from the New York, New Jersey area like me, you remember those ads with Jerry, right? Where he put up his hands, his big belly, he says, "Come on in, no, money talks, nobody walks." That's basically what this is. Look, they wanted renovations. This is like Bud Adams in the Oilers and whatever that was, 1980, 90 something.
1996.
They wanted to get renovations, whatever the year was. They wanted to get renovations. And so on the ballot in Jefferson County, and Dan would know this, they had a ballot initiative, a referendum for a 3/8 sales tax increase. That's half a penny. And they thought this thing would pass easy because everybody loves the Chiefs. They had just won the Super Bowl. It got killed because nobody has any money, because inflation is raging and people are broke. Tax increase, no, out. So they voted down. It wasn't even close. Even though they had spent all this money behind it, voters came out, blasted it out of there. So now the owners are like, okay, well, now what do we do? But then Kansas brilliantly passes bipartisan legislation. They have a conservative Senate. They have a conservative House. They pass this legislation, which is basically hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentive under their STAR program. And then it goes on the Democrat governor's desk, Laura Kelly, who's under fire for all kinds of things. What is she going to do? Well, she can be a hero, right? Just like when Glenn Youngkin in Virginia tried to get the hockey team and the basketball team, the Wizards or whatever the hell they're called, and stupid name, try to get the Wizards there. You know, you make a name for yourself as governor because, hey, you're the person that brought these teams in. So they got $70 million on the table. They're promising brand new stadiums under this thing they have called STAR Bond Program, which is the sales tax and revenue. But politicians can come up with all kinds of ways to spend your money. I don't even know what this thing is. So it's a sales tax and revenue bond program where they sell bonds that are not due in 30 years in order to get the revenue to give the billionaire owners to make more billions to come to Kansas. I mean, it is an incredible thing. I got to hand it. Next week we'll get on, just remind me, we'll get on the chairman of the Republican Party, is a good friend of mine, Mike Brown. We'll get him on to explain this better than I can. But they're throwing all this money, and now the owners have tremendous leverage. I mean, if Kaufman of the Kaufman family now, Royals, they have tremendous leverage. It's like, hey, you don't give us what we want, see ya. Here's what happened to Bud Adams, right? Here's what happened to the Oilers. Astrodome was it was just outdated. You want a new stadium, you wanted to move. They wouldn't give him any money. Harris County said no, do it on your own. Yeah. He said, fine, I'm out. Cut the deal with Nashville. Team goes. Then they give the Texans 3 times what he asked for.
Okay. Now we're way off topic. Now we're talking about the Texans. Look, that was a nice snapshot into my dad's brain there. We go from Oilers to inflation to Glenn Youngkin to my good friend, the chairman of the RNC, back to the Texans. So if you want to, like, a little snapshot into John's brain, almost all of his political views are somehow related to when the Oilers left Houston in 1996. I don't know how. Like, this was such an important.
Maybe it all ties in.
You were like in your 30s or whatever, and this was just your. This was like such a foundational moment in your political ideology, was the fact that the Oilers left Houston. Nate, we're going to give you the last word here. We're probably not done talking about this. I actually would like to have Mike Brown on. That sounds kind of interesting. But we'll give you the last word. What do you think about this whole deal?
I guess I just don't get it. So it's like, they're saying it's a minimum $1 billion capital investment. Kansas will cover 70%. So you figure that's $700 million for each stadium. That's a minimum investment if both teams go to $1.4 billion. And those bonds are paid for by sports betting, which already exists, and they can use that for other stuff. It's for state lottery ticket sales, which already exists, and they can use to pay for other stuff. The only thing that's being generated new is the sales and alcohol taxes generated in areas around the new stadiums proposed. So are they really going to generate $1.4 billion in taxes in the next 30 years in just stadium sales? Like, that just seems like an absurd number. So it's like, is this the best use of the money?
Yeah,
it's just ego.
This is like ridiculous. But look, let's have Mike Brown next week to talk about this. We'll have a little bit more opportunity. Look, I want to give a shout out to Vince for joining us, Nate, Dan, and Dad as always. Shout out to Smooth Al in the captain's seat there for helping Dad out with all of his technology issues. He was able to rig up this system where we see him on the screen and we hear him on the phone. So we love that. You're listening to the Godzilla Win Saturday Pick Show. That's our show. We'll see you next week, bright and early, 8 a.m. And up next, for the time being, though we don't know how long, is the War Room with Steve Bannon.
Oh, you're so bad.
See you next week.
Don't forget, GodzillaWins.com. Go to Daily Picks. Daily Picks.